Now let's learn how to determine the inverse of functions.
Has this hooked you?
Today we are learning how to determine the inverse of a function. And we will represent the function graphically. Determine the inverse of a function. SOL Algebra 2 Trig 7g. Vocab terms to know. Inverse, relation, and function. The definitions of these terms. Inverse relation. A relation that interchanges the input and output of the original relation. The graph of an inverse relation is a reflection of the graph of the original relation, with y equals x as the line of reflection. Function. A relation for which each input has exactly one output. Here is the first example. F of x equals x squared. This function is graphed to the right. Let us solve it. F of x equals x squared. So x equals y squared. Remember, determining the inverse of the function is where you switch the x and y. Next, find the square root of x and the square root of y squared. This will equal square root of x, which equals y. And so, flipping it around, y equals the square root of x. So the inverse of the function, f of x equals x squared, which equal inverse square root of x. Here is the graph shown of the inverse as well as the original function. As you can see, the coordinates are inverted due to the inverse of the function. Let's try the next problem. Real-life application using logarithmic and exponential functions. Log of x minus 3 equals 2. We will solve this by a equals log of b if and only b is to the a power of 10. So x minus 3 equals 10 squared. This would equals x equals 103. The inverse was graphed using the table found after graphing the original function and then looking at the table provided by the graphing calculator. Now, on to the next question. High-level assessment question. F of x equals plus or minus square root of x plus 2. We will solve this using the same steps as before. Similar to before, the inverse of the function would equal x squared minus 2. Graphically, this would end up being quite similar to the first function that we have solved. The inverse coordinates would equal such as 0, -2, and -2, 0, and so on. This lesson can also be found in the textbook pages 438 through 445. A common mistake is not putting the plus and minus signs before the square root of a function, though this can also be applied to other types of problems. If determining a function is like tying a knot, determining the inverse of a function is like untying a knot in the sense that you go backwards. And remember, when finding the inverse of a function, y equals x, and you solve so that y is by itself.
Next, let's learn the composition of functions.
Finding the composition of functions. SOL Algebra 2 Trig 7h. This lesson can be found in textbook pages 430 to 435. Vocab terms to know. Variable and composition. Variable. A letter that is used to represent one or more numbers. Composition of functions. The composition of a function g with a function f is h of x, which equals g of f of x. Let's begin. Straight from the text. Let f of x equals 2x minus 7, and g of x equals x squared plus 4. What is the value of g of f of 3? First, plug 3 into f. So f of 3 equals 2 times 3 minus 7, which can be simplified to 6 minus 7, and to negative 1. So f of 3 equals negative 1. Next, plug negative 1 into f as you plug it into the equation for g. G of negative 1 equals negative 1 squared plus 4, which would equal 1 plus 4. So g of f of 3 equals 5. Real life stuff. You make a purchase at a local hardware store, but what you've bought is too big to take home in your car. For a small fee, you arrange to have the hardware store deliver your purchase for you. You pay for your purchase plus the sales taxes plus the fee. The taxes are 7.5% and the fee is $20. The equation for this problem would be f of t of x equals f times 1.075 and t of f of x equals t times x plus 20. So we solve these problems. F of t of x would become 1.075x plus 20, and t of f of x equals 1.075x times x plus 20. So the answer would be 1.075x plus 21.50. Next, high-level assessment question. F of x equals 3x squared minus 2, and g of x equals 4x plus 1. If g of f of x, g of x equals 4 times 3x squared minus 2, parentheses closed, plus 1. Next, it would equal 12x cubed minus 8 plus 1. Even further, it would be 12x cubed minus 7. So g of x equals 12x cubed minus 7. A common mistake to watch out for is mixing up variables in an equation. For example, if f of g of x, one might solve for g of f of x. Composition functions are just like Russian dolls in which they stack within each other, and be sure to read the equations carefully and solve for whatever the question is asking for. That's all.
Oh God.